The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Trading for Myles Garrett or Cooper Kupp.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast.
The pursuit or potential pursuit of a couple of big names that are set to hit the trade market, or at least for teams to hear out some trade offers from other teams. Edge rusher Myles Garrett, as well as wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Now, if you haven't seen this, I'll explain why both of these guys are considered to potentially be on the move here soon. But let me tell you first that the pursuit of Myles Garrett, I feel like, would be an empty one if you're the New Orleans Saints. You don't really have the draft capital to give up for him. You don't really have the money to pay him or to help to move him. But wide receiver Cooper Kupp could be a name that the New Orleans Saints could be and should be willing to check in on at the right price, and if the Rams are willing to do the right thing to help it all happen. And both of those boxes may actually be checked. So here's the deal. Myles Garrett has asked for a trade, says that he wants to win a championship, but doesn't believe that he's going to be able to do that in Cleveland. And so from Cleveland to Canton, he wants his opportunity to get out and get to a contender. So I would expect teams like the Detroit Lions, team like the two teams we're about to watch this weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs, well, I know that they're within the division, so very unlikely, but I would expect at least for the Baltimore Ravens to check in and see, hey, what would it cost, including the in-division tax. But it's not a place that I see the New Orleans Saints going. However, I could see the New Orleans Saints at least checking in on Cooper Kupp. And you might say, well, Ross, he's got a $20+ million cap hit in 2025, $20+ million cap hit in 2026. He's not as good as he once was. He's not the Cooper Kupp that caught 140, plus receptions a few years ago. He's not that guy. He didn't look great up against or for Los Angeles last year. I get all that. I truly do. I really, really understand that. Like, you look at Cooper Kupp's numbers as a receiver and you can see everything kind of falling off and everything throughout the seasons. You're probably trading for a guy you're going to get 12 games out of, but are those 12 games enough to make it worth it? I mean, you look at over the course of the past few years when it comes to what it is that he's been doing, and he's still been somebody that the team has relied upon, the team has looked to get the ball to. He just hasn't had the same level of production. In 2021, he led the league with 145 receptions and nearly cracked 2,000 receiving yards at 1947. And since then, 812 receiving yards, 737 receiving yards, 710 receiving yards, having played just 12 games in 12 games in 2023 and 2024, 9 games in 2022. After that incredible 2021 season, in which he played all 17 games, was targeted a whopping 191 times in the process. So you're not moving for a Cooper Kupp to try to get 2021 Cooper Kupp. You're moving for a Cooper Kupp in order to get a do-it-all dirty work wide receiver 2, a Traquan Smith with much more value and upside. And honestly, you're trying to get somebody like Cooper Kupp because he's absolutely, and I'm just going to say it this way, peeved when it comes to how things have been handled with him and the Los Angeles Rams. He said basically that he always wanted to be in LA. He wanted to stay in LA. He wanted to finish his career in LA. And that he's basically going to bring a lot of heat now if he does, and as he does get moved. Now, he's not asking for a trade, but he was basically taking to social media and the Notes app announcing that the expectation is that he will be traded by the Los Angeles Rams. So this feels like more of a team decision than his. In fact, in his note, he even said that he doesn't want it. Like, it's not him. He doesn't want to be traded. He wants to stay in Los Angeles. And so if he does indeed go on the move, he would only go on the move for about a day 3 pick. And at the most, you're hoping and you're expecting, and in fact, according to reports, the Rams are willing to do this. They're willing to pick up some of his salary and some of his cap number. So if he's able to, or if they're able to pick up some of his base salary and then move him, and you're still able to move him for a 4th round pick at most, a 6th or a 7th round pick after. Otherwise, I'm just looking at the New Orleans Saints picks. They have no 5th round pick. I think it could be worth the move if they're gonna foot the bill. And if all it's going to cost you is a day 3 pick, then yeah, make a move for a Cooper Kupp. If nothing else, it gives you a veteran, an actual veteran in the wide receiver room that can help guys like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. That's not a redundant talent to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed as a speedy deep threat. He gives you somebody that's going to be able to operate in the short area, in the intermediate area, gives you a 3rd and 2 passing option, gives you a 1st and 10 or 2nd and 10 passing option to get it to 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 5. He gives you all of that. You're not looking for Cooper Kupp to come somewhere and be a superstar. That's why you're only giving up a day 3 pick to get him. And so here's the way that I would do this. If I'm the New Orleans Saints, I'm monitoring the situation. If he gets traded before the draft, then he gets traded before the draft. Totally fine. That's likely to happen as teams are going to want to get him in, figure out how much of the salary cap the Rams are willing to pick up and how that impacts their free agency class and all those other things. So I would expect him to probably be moved early. And if he gets moved early, c'est la vie, right? So be it. He gets moved early, totally fine. But if he's still on the roster and they're not looking to move him until the draft, then what I would do if I'm the New Orleans Saints is wait to see what day 1 and day 2 looks like when you're on the board. If you don't walk away with a wide receiver with your 1st round pick, your 2nd round pick, or either of your either of your 3rd round picks, my apologies, and you didn't go out and sign a different wide receiver in free agency, I'd start working the phones with my 2nd, 4th round pick. And if they're not interested in that, then I'd be looking at, or I guess they would be interested in that, but I'd be shopping that 6th round pick. Then if they're not interested in that, then I'd be willing to move my 2nd, 4th round pick. Because you think about the wide receivers you could potentially get in the 4th round, you're probably picking somebody for 12 games worth of time, right? Not necessarily 12 games, but 12 games worth of snaps. And you're probably looking for somebody that might come in and you're still hoping to translate to the NFL. Remember, you've got a Bub Means that's working to do that, all those other things. So you don't have to go the redundant route. And say, go and get somebody that's proven in the NFL. Go and get somebody that's able to mentor your young wide receivers and all of those things. So that's where I would look at the potential of going after a Cooper Kupp. If he gets moved before that, he gets moved before that. If they're not interested in moving him to somebody within the conference, they're not interested in moving him to somewhere near inside the conference, totally fine. No love lost, no loss when you're not giving up anything. But that's kind of the way that I would play this. Is it unlikely? Yes. Is it worth at least looking into? Yes. And is a trade for Cooper Kupp far more likely than a trade for Myles Garrett? Absolutely, especially as the Rams are looking to pick up the bill. And of course, Cooper Kupp's 2026 base salary, over $14 million, but $0 of it is guaranteed. So you can move off with a clean cut right after 1 season. So you'll be able to use a day 3 pick for a 1-year rental on a physical receiver that can block and that can give you another physical option as a pass catcher, and then bang, you're right out from under it in 2026. It's a way that the New Orleans Saints could potentially go.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. How about a Broadway show? Can't wait to take my kids to Broadway. The energy, the excitement, it's unforgettable. Seeing live performers, it's the best. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Just how close are the Packers to the Philadelphia Eagles?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Our pal Carmen Vitale from Fox Sports joins me now. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
This is my favorite thing because it's like camp people I don't see in person.
Yes,
I see
true.
once a year, every year.
Yes.
So here we are, and the Packers aren't here.
No.
Which is kind of a bummer. But the Lions aren't here.
I know. None of the NFC North teams are.
None of those NFC North teams.
I know. One and done for all of them.
Did we just wildly overrate this division, or what happened?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, I don't think we overrated the division because this division is still going to be extremely competitive going forward, and the Bears are now hoping to add to that with the Ben Johnson splash hiring. I think a huge reason why the Bears did finally do something that they've never done before is because they realized the rest of the teams in this division are set up to not only be successful now, but down the road. I mean, all of these teams have longevity, stability. They have guys under team control for multiple years, like cornerstones under team control for multiple years. So I think the Bears are just finally like, oh God, we got to do something because it's not going to get easier anytime soon.
The Lions, though, Aaron Glenn is out. He's in New York now. Ben Johnson in the division, which my pal Matt Derry over at Locked On Lions not super happy about. We were like, we need to manifest him to Jacksonville or to Las Vegas. That did not happen.
No, it didn't.
But to what degree would you be worried from a Lions perspective that there's this brain drain phenomenon here?
It was interesting because Ben Johnson said it at his press conference where he was like, honestly, the structure of everything is built. The runway is there already in Detroit, that it doesn't even really matter who the coordinator is, which I also thought was kind of like petty on his part.
Yeah.
But it was basically just saying, I mean, with all the talent they have, and not only the fact that they've developed their own players, but Dan Campbell and his staff have been able to develop coaches. You see guys like Kelvin Shepard getting the DC job, getting promoted. You've seen multiple guys now moving up kind of in those ranks and then pulling from other places. They just landed Casey Rogers from the Buccaneers for their D-line coach.
Someone the Packers wanted a lot.
Yes, he had offers from multiple teams, and pretty much every team in the NFC North, and chose the Lions because he believes in what they're doing and how to kind of they're
coached with Dan Campbell too.
Yes, he did. So there's all of this that I'm not worried about the Lions because, again, the roster is constructed in a way that they have guys like Aiden Hutchinson under team control till 2026, Jahmyr Gibbs till 2027. So like stuff like that where it really, not that it doesn't take a crazy person to be able to get those guys going, but you have all that talent and it makes your job really easy as a coach.
It does, although we've seen the difference. I mean, we talked to Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles about the gap in talent from last year to this year, not huge, but then they had Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
And he's a force multiplier.
Sure.
Like that coaching piece can be really, really big.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell built this incredible staff.
Right.
There's no guarantee he can replace it to the same level.
No, there's not.
But we have seen like Sean McVay, he just like keeps finding, I don't know where he keeps finding these guys from.
Yes.
Unbelievable that they're able to do this. The Packers starting to run into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Jeff Hafley loses Anthony Campanile, Derek Ainsley, interviews over in Atlanta. What did you think as this Packers team was trying to revamp on the fly with the coaching piece of this with Jeff Hafley? What did you make of what you saw from them this year?
Honestly, I was very impressed with how much taking the ball away masked, kind of the early bumps in the road, right? Like you weren't getting pressure. There just wasn't that formidable front seven, D-line, all that kind of stuff getting to the quarterback.
They expected to.
Which they expected to, but at the same time, you had a guy like Xavier McKinney who we knew was going to make this whole thing go under Jeff Hafley because safeties are the most important position in his scheme. Yep. And you saw the takeaways kind of mask all of these issues so that down the stretch, like towards the back end of the season, they were getting pressure. They were starting to figure it out. They were starting to affect the quarterback, and like better than most teams. In fact, I believe they were top 5 in pressure percentage for the last like 6 weeks of the season or so. And so they went into the postseason where you felt like they were a complete team, which is why it made it such a shock that they were one and done in the postseason, because you really felt like, all right, this team, Jordan, but none of them played their best. And I think that was the main issue here. And you need more out of guys on that front. I do think that there is something to changing schemes, especially when that scheme has been in Green Bay for 15 years. You go from a 3-4 to a 4-3 for the first time in forever. And your roster has, for generations now, been built to accommodate a 3-4. And that's why you saw Preston Smith go at the trade deadline. That's why it was so much of the season, I think, for Jeff Hafley was just figuring out his personnel, which guys could make the jump, which guys they needed to get rid of, who they now need. And I really do think that they're going to figure it out. You need to give these guys time. We want results like right then and there, but when you're switching over an entire scheme, an entire staff, all of that kind of stuff, it just takes a little bit of time.
Look at Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, the first half of the year, he's making splash plays here and there. In the second half, he's like the best linebacker in the NFL. Yes. So it's funny. We were here last year, not here, but at Super Bowl. And everyone that I talked to was like, Jordan Love, huh?
Yeah.
And then this year it's sort of like Jordan Love, huh? and I don't know what to make of that. What was different this year to you? I mean, why weren't they able to take that jump to your mind?
Yeah, I really do think that the injury had a lot to do with it, because we know these guys too, and Jordan Love too as well. He's no exception. He's going to downplay absolutely everything, and he's going to say, I mean, this is the same team where Aaron Rodgers talked about like, oh, the thumb injury is no big deal, and his last season in Green Bay, and that was clearly an issue for him. So I think there's like, and that's the culture at so many different places, is like, no, downplay it, it's no big deal. I do think that the injuries were a huge deal, and especially like the stop-start of it all, where it took for like a really long time to even get into a rhythm, and that there's something to that. And especially then, even when Jordan Love would get into the rhythm after playing a few games, then Christian Watson would go out, Romeo Doubs was out,
Jaden Reed goes out,
yeah. Right? Like, you had so many guys in and out of the lineup that you just weren't operating at your full extent. And I think that there's something to be said there for staffing, for development, all of that kind of stuff, where you need to kind of figure out a workaround. But I do think that Matt LaFleur is so good at in-game adjustments, at adjustments throughout the season. You saw those guys before and after their bye week, and it was night and day on both sides of the ball. Yeah. And I think that that's not a coincidence. That's Matt LaFleur making adjustments, but you just don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that on a week-to-week basis, and you can take advantage of it when you do have those 2 weeks off or whatever, 2 weeks.
Do they need to make a big move?
I don't think so, because they're the Packers. Yeah. Like, it was crazy to see them do the Josh Jacobs move. It was crazy to see them do the Xavier McKinney move. And on the other side of it, it all really does make sense, because you wanted the run game for Jordan Love to be able to rely on that now that Aaron Jones was gone. Yeah. You knew that you needed a dude at safety to run Jeff Hafley's scheme. But now when you're not going through any of that drastic turnover, changing a quarterback, changing a defensive coordinator, I think you just let the guys gel, and you do what this organization has done for years and decades and generations of, you draft really well, you bring them up through the Green Bay way, and it ends up working out.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in Super Bowl bets, that's icing on the cake. And the $5, you could go to the point spread on the Super Bowl. FanDuel has it close right now. Chiefs slightly favored. Kansas City laying 1.5 against Philadelphia this Sunday. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, guys, here in New Orleans, joined by PFF's Trevor Sycamore, buddy. I always appreciate you making time to speak with me. Good to see you. As always, got to talk about the Washington Commanders here. Yeah. And I really want to bring you on because I love your team building conversations. Mm-hmm. And we always talk about what phase or what stage is a team in their building process. Right. Now, obviously, the Commanders entered 2024, rebuild, retool, recalibration, however, whatever word you want to use there. Yeah. But now, NFC Championship game. Yeah. You know what I mean? They got 30 expiring contracts. Yeah. They got a good amount of draft picks, a ton of cap space. Where do you see this team? Like, what phase is this team in for you?
Yeah, ahead of schedule for sure. You have to believe the winning window is open, right? I mean, and that's what it's all about, getting to that legitimate winning window. And even though I think they're going to go through a lot of changes still on the roster, I mean, it was year one of them retooling, reshaping, getting Ron Rivera's guys, phasing some of those guys out, getting a lot more Dan Quinn guys in the building. We knew it was going to, that part of the process is going to continue still. Yeah. But now you go forward thinking, okay, we probably bought ourselves an extra year of the winning window. Because normally a winning window in the NFL is 3-4 years if you do it correctly. They're probably hoping that this past year felt like one of those wins, and it was a bonus maybe fifth year, and you hope that, okay, now we're in it, and you hope that, even a year from now, it's truly, the window is wide open and you're thinking about a Super Bowl. You really are. Yeah, absolutely. So now the question is, how hard do they go after it, right? Right. Guys like Myles Garrett requested a trade. I know the Browns are saying, but we've heard teams say that before. Right. Cooper Kupp. I mean, this one, the team is just saying, hey, thanks for everything, bro. Good luck with your next step. Yeah. So I want to start with Myles. This team, they want to be aggressive on defense. They want to hunt the football, hunt the quarterback. I think the fit is pretty clear. Yes. If you're Washington, given how many openings you have,
where you are in this process, what are you willing to give up to try to go get a guy like Myles Garrett?
I think it's probably going to cost at least, like, this is my thought and estimated guess, as we are a couple of days after Myles Garrett announcing that he's requesting a trade.
Yeah.
I think it's going to cost at least 2 first-round picks and probably something else. Either a player, maybe another second-round pick on top of that, because you got to realize, like, there's a lot of things that go into the price being that high. One, Myles Garrett's unbelievable. He's one of the best defensive players in the world, in the prime of his career still. I believe that. He's got a pretty cap-friendly contract for how good of a player he is. And then also, it would take some cap gymnastics for Cleveland to even be able to trade him. And when a star player announces that he wants to be out, I don't think this is just willy-nilly, didn't really think about it. Okay, let me talk to ownership. He's already talked to ownership. Remember, he talked about this not too long ago where he said, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild.
Right.
And he's then talked to ownership. He's talked to Andrew Berry. He's talked to Kevin Stefanski. And yet he still did this.
Yep.
So unless this is just a give me more money and a contract extension move from him, I think they figure out a way to trade him.
Yeah.
But it has to be still worth it for them. And the leverage would then come from basically every team in the NFL would want Myles Garrett.
Right.
So to me, it's going to be a pick of at least 2 first-round picks, because Cleveland's going to want that flexibility of next year's draft to want to go up and get a quarterback, because I don't think they're going to take one in this year's draft. So they're going to want that ammo and that flexibility. And then obviously, if you're trading away Myles Garrett, you're tearing it down to the studs.
Right.
You're tearing the whole roster down, ultimate rebuild. All that to say, the price tag's worth it for Washington. To me, the price tag is 100% worth it to Washington, because it's not just about getting a player of Myles Garrett's caliber. You also have to realize where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Free agents are going to want to play with Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
Free agents are going to want to play with Dan Quinn. So, yes, you'll have less premium draft picks to acquire some of these players. But I think Washington will be in a unique spot where they will be able to entice and lure some of these good players to maybe sign for a little bit less than they would maybe sign somewhere else or something like that. So that is why I don't know if I'd pay this price for every team, but I would pay it if I'm Washington.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a steep price, but, you know, as I just covered on my show, like, I think if it brings in the right production, I mean, you can absolutely justify it. Like you said, I mean, we got to watch that firsthand with Tom Brady coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how many people wanted to come up. And I don't know, maybe Chris Godwin, maybe he's willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to come to Washington. I don't know, Trevor. I don't know. You know, a lot of Bucs fans would not be happy with me if that happened. But let's get to Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
So Terry McLaurin's under contract. Not a lot of other receivers under contract for the Washington Commanders. Luke McCaffrey, the developmental project there in Washington. I can't get over the $20 million. You know what I mean? Like, they trade for him. And I know things can be worked out. You can tack on some void years, add some new years. Where do you stand on Washington maybe being in on a guy like Cooper Kupp?
I think it's a fit, right? Yeah. I think I would like the fit. I don't love that price tag as much for a team like Washington.
Yeah.
To me, if you're going to go all in on that kind of money, you're probably thinking of doing it for a wide receiver that, you know, they were in the Brandon Ayuk conversation last year, right?
Yep.
Ayuk's more worth it to me because not only are you trading for a guy that is a legitimate wide receiver one, right? And that's including a roster that has Terry McLaurin in it. So if you want to say, like, no, Terry McLaurin's still the wide receiver one and Brandon Ayuk's the wide receiver two, he's probably the best wide receiver two in the NFL at that point, right? So that's a situation where whoever you have one or two, it's worth it for you. Kupp, it's great. He's getting up there in age. You're going to have to pay the salary cap. You're going to have to pay the draft pick to get him. In a vacuum, I'd love the fit.
Yeah.
But I don't love that trade-off for Washington nearly as much. So I think if they made this move, it would be hard for me to criticize it because it would make the team better. But I'd probably be a little bit cooler on that one if I was Washington.
So you heard it from me already. Now you heard it from Trevor Sikkema. So if you disagree, that's fine. But I'm just saying you got two, at least one smart person. One maybe. I've been paid long enough to think I'm smart.
You're a smart
person.
Come on,
you gotta get it.
I mean,
I appreciate
I mean, you talking about Chris Godwin leaving wasn't smart. But that's from a guy who's handled his Tampa Bay trade. So
yeah, absolutely. So we got to talk draft, right? But I want to talk about the last draft first, Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
I mean, how much did you believe in him as a franchise quarterback potentially coming in? Again, it's only been 1 year.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce just said it, like 1 year is great. You got to do it another year.
Sure.
But how much did you believe in him? Go back into draft season of last year. And how much did he exceed your expectations this season?
Yeah, so I had him ranked 21st overall on my big board. I had him as QB3 in last year's draft. I had him behind Caleb Williams. I had him behind Drake May, who had his 1 and 2 in the class. And when I look at Jaden, I didn't doubt the ceiling, I just wondered if we would hit it because you look at what he was able to do at LSU, incredibly productive. Don't mean to take anything away from him. But let's face it. One, it's college. You're going up against college defenses.
Right.
Two, you're throwing to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Not bad, right? I mean, it's a pretty good situation to be in. And so I just wondered, is it going to be that easy at the NFL level for him? And the crazy thing is, was easier. He was better as a rookie than he was at LSU, which is crazy to think. And so you got to give him so much props for that. The way that he was able to play with so much confidence in a rookie season. To me, we've done some exercises, some way too early redrafts, right? I mean, we did this over on the NFL Stock Exchange show. Connor Rogers, my co-host, and I did it. And of course, the big question of a redraft is what do you do at 1 for Chicago? And both of us agreed, you take Jaden. And it's not that we don't believe in Caleb, but everybody can look at arm talent. Everybody can look at, all right, how you manage the game, what your overall ceiling is. But the thing is, confidence is the least guaranteed thing. Look at a guy like Jamarcus Russell, right? I mean, like, this is just one example of, I feel like, so many of quarterbacks, all the talent in the world. And yeah, some things go on behind the scenes outside of football. I understand that. But all of that goes into the confidence you have playing the game. And the fact that Jaden was able to be this confident as a rookie, you take that all day, especially given the fact that he's got franchise caliber talent on top of it. So I had him 21st. I was lower on him. I had him at QB3, but it wasn't any sort of like, I didn't believe in the ceiling. I just wondered if we would see it at the NFL level. And not only did we see it, we've already seen even better than what we saw at LSU.
No, I agree completely with everything you just said. So let's get to this year's draft, picking number 29 in the first round, 29th pick in the first round.
Yeah.
So a couple things they could use. They use pass rush help, run defense help, obviously.
Yeah.
Could use another corner, right? If they move Mikey Sanderson back inside, need another perimeter guy.
Right.
If they keep Mikey outside, they need a slot guy.
Right.
Some people want running back. I don't know if first round's too early. Some people want a second receiver, O-line upgrades. Where are the Commanders most likely to get one of the, I mean, it's a pretty wide berth, right?
Yeah.
Where are they most likely to get like a blue chip if there is one that late in this first round?
Blue chip's tough at 29, but it does feel like the sweet spot for this draft of where they're picking edge and corner. Like I can just think, using the PFF mock draft simulator, a lot of times when I'm picking for Washington at the back end of the first round, a cornerback like Trey Amos from Ole Miss, a cornerback like Siobhan Revelle from East Carolina. Like, I think both of those guys would be fantastic for them. Sometimes Jahdae Barron from Texas can make it to them at the back end of the first round. And then when you look at edge rushers, it's a Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, his teammate JT Tuimoloau. If you want more of a stand-up pass rusher, Donovan Izaraku type of player. And so, like, there's a lot of different options that they could go with at corner or edge at the back end of the first round. That's typically where I gravitate towards. I'd love another wide receiver, but I'm trying to think of a wide receiver that would be, if a Luther Burden were to fall to them at the back end of the first round, that I think you consider. But outside of Tetron McMillan or Luther Burden, even for as much as I love Emeka Egbuka, I love Matthew Golden, like I love those dudes, I don't know if I'd pick one of those wide receivers over one of the edge rushers that I think will be left for them. So edge rusher, corner are the two spots that I typically look at the back end of the first round.